All right, let's get right into it. We're about to unpack a truly incredible story of change. We're talking about the journey of South Africa, how it went from one of the most brutal, segregated systems you can imagine to this beacon of democracy and reconciliation. It's a heavy story for sure, full of oppression and struggle, but, and this is the important part, it's ultimately a story about hope.
And to really get what this journey was all about, you have to start right here. Just look at this sign for a second. This isn't just a simple warning. It's a threat of violence, of being dumped in the sea, all because of the color of your skin. And this wasn't some one-off thing, no. This was the bedrock of an entire system.
So, what was this system called? Well, the official name for it was apartheid. And you have to understand this wasn't just about people having prejudiced attitudes. Nope, this was baked into the law. It was an official government policy designed to separate people and systematically deny the non-white majority their most basic human rights. And this went on for decades.
So let's dig into what this system of division actually looked like day to day. What was the reality of living under segregation? Because it was a carefully built world, all designed to create inequality. Just look at this. Think about it. A day at the beach. It's supposed to be simple, fun, right? Universal. But here, this sign on a beach in Durban makes it crystal clear. This area is only for members of the white race group. It's such a stark example of how even the most normal public places were turned into tools of separation.
And it wasn't just the beaches. Oh no. The segregation was total. It seeped into every single corner of life. You can see it on this list. Trains and buses, hospitals, schools, libraries, movie theaters, swimming pools, public toilets, even churches. Absolutely everything was separate.
And this really shows you the insane power imbalance. On one side, you have the small white minority. They held all the political power, they had full citizenship. On the other side, the huge non-white majority. They couldn't vote, they weren't allowed to live in so-called white areas, and they were just systematically treated like second-class citizens in the country they were born in.
But, a system like this, it's never going to exist without a fight. People pushed back, they fought back, and they were driven by a really powerful idea. And that brings us to the next part of our story, the long, hard walk to freedom.
And right at the center of this whole struggle, you have Nelson Mandela. Just listen to these words he spoke at his trial for treason back in 1964. He said he cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. See, he wasn't just fighting against apartheid. He was fighting for something, for an ideal he said he was prepared to die for. Wow. 27. Just that number. For believing in that ideal, for daring to stand up to the system. That's how many years Nelson Mandela spent locked away in prison. Let that sink in. 27 years.
Now, Mandela was obviously a huge figure, but he wasn't alone in this, not by a long shot. This was a massive movement. The African National Congress, the ANC, they were the ones leading the charge. And they built this incredible coalition, pulling in workers' unions, the Communist Party, and you know what? Even some white allies who knew the system was wrong.
So after decades and decades of struggle inside the country and a whole lot of pressure from the outside world, the system just couldn't hold on anymore. The cracks were starting to show. And this is where we get to the turning point, the beginning of a new dawn.
And this timeline really lays out the whole incredible arc. You start in 1964, with Mandela being sentenced to life in prison. Seems hopeless, right? But then, jump to 1990. The discriminatory laws are finally being repealed and Mandela walks free. And then, the payoff. 1994, the moment South Africa holds its very first democratic election where everyone could vote.
Okay, but what happens next? This, to me, is maybe the most amazing part of the whole story. Because when they got power, they had a choice. And the new South Africa was not built on revenge. It was built on something totally radical: forgiveness.
And that leads us to this huge question, right? After everything they'd been through, after decades of oppression, what if the black majority had just said, you know what? It's our turn now. What if they had decided to get revenge? Just take a second and really think about that. That would have been the easy path, wouldn't it? The predictable one, just another cycle of violence. But they didn't do that. They chose a different way, a much, much harder way.
And Mandela himself explains why. He said the peaceful transition only happened exactly because we were prepared to accept the inherent capacity for goodness in the other. Can you imagine? To believe in the goodness of your oppressors? That is an absolutely extraordinary idea to build a country on.
So how on earth do you make that happen in the real world? Well, here was the blueprint. First, black leaders went out and publicly appealed to their own people to forgive the whites. Step 2, and this is the really wild part, the former oppressors and the freedom fighters sat down at the same table, together. And step 3, they worked together to write one common constitution for a brand new South Africa.
And by doing this, South Africa taught the entire world a powerful lesson, a lesson about reconciliation.
And what came out of this amazing process? Well, the new constitution they created gave its citizens some of the most extensive rights you could find anywhere in the world. It didn't just tear down the old, hateful system. It built something new and beautiful in its place.
And I love how Mandela put it. He said the Constitution was like a solemn pact. It was a promise saying, we will never, ever let our racist, brutal past happen again. But it was also more than that. He called it a charter for the transformation of our country. It was a roadmap for the future.
And this whole process created a whole new identity for the country. South Africans started calling themselves a rainbow nation. And isn't that just a perfect way to put it? It's a country that's not about one single color, but about celebrating all its different people. Black and white, men and women, all sharing one home.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. This story, it's not just some history lesson, right? It's a real-life example of what's possible. And it kind of forces us to ask ourselves a tough question. In our own lives, in our own communities where we see division, how can we use that same idea, choosing forgiveness over revenge, to build a better future for ourselves?